was like probably the end all be all local show that we ever had. So like it was already just like going balls to the wall insane in there. Cause
Pun
like,
intended.
yeah, like that was, yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. This has been an episode that I've been looking forward to recording, as this band has been one of my faves when it comes to like the new wave of like, I guess not the resurgence, but just like current metalcore bands that are really killing it. And I think what was funny is that I got a notification that he started following the Scoped account, and then I just DM'd him being like, yo, and then, you know, that sparked the conversation to have Mitchell from VARIALS on this podcast. So, dude, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, you know, obviously VARIALS has some new music coming down the pipe. Well, there's been new music that's been released, but, you know, with a new LP on the way. Like I said, like VARIALS was a band where I had discovered you guys through a very interesting means, which I'll get into a little bit, but it's been cool to see you stepping into the shoes of being the vocalist of the band, formerly being the guitar player. But yeah, I'm stoked to be just talking about the band, because truly I've been a fan of you guys ever since the first release, and Pain Again was like bumping on repeat when it dropped. So yeah, I'm very excited to have you on the show, my guy.
Yeah, dude, no worries. Again, thanks for having me. I literally just like saw your podcast with Brian come up like on my YouTube on my TV, and I watched it and I was like, this is cool. So I just followed you.
Yeah, no, it's crazy that, you know, this will be well into season 3 of the podcast, and Brian's episode was just at the top of 2. So it's crazy how that has been pushing off, and, you know, people have been finding this show through whether it's an interview or just like a clip on Instagram. So it's hella sick. The spider web, it goes endlessly.
For sure it does. No, yeah, it I've been watching like a lot more podcasts recently, so I feel like I'm getting a lot more of that recommended to me.
Yeah,
like, it's been I was never really super into podcasts before until the past couple of months, and I've been consuming a lot of it. So yeah.
Yeah, and definitely like it's funny because as a videographer, like it was the number one thing when I started the show to do a video version of this podcast. While I think there's people now who are starting to add that into their show, but for me, it was always like, I need to have it because, and this comes more from a marketing background for me, where it's like, I want to see the clip of the person talking about whatever versus just a bouncing waveform or whatever the fuck. But yeah, it's crazy with how that is just becoming the future of a lot of things. But before we get into the chats here, it's mandatory here on the Scoped Exposure podcast to check some bevs. So Mitchell, it's tradition for the guests to go first. So tell me what you got liquids wise for the show.
So I recently have been addicted to, I got one of those Nespresso coffee machines. And right now I got a Starbucks cappuccino roast, big mug style cappuccino drink going on. And yeah, the thing kicks the shit out of Keurig. It's like insane. I've spent way too much money on pods for it, but it's so worth it.
Yeah. Well, you know, pod coffee on the pod makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's you know, I feel like just as important as the bev check, the mug check is important too. So do you want to display that?
So this is my favorite mug. It's from a place in
Idaho.
Craters of the Moon.
Cool.
I was on tour in July and August with this band from Australia called Void of Vision. I was tour managing them, and I played a couple shows with them on guitar at the end of the tour, and they're one of my favorite bands. So like that fell into place like so crazily to be able to like go on a tour with them. And we were trying to go to Yellowstone on a day off, and we completely screwed up the routing, and we were like, okay, going there makes no sense. So I literally just searched on our route national park. This place came up. We had no clue what it was, didn't look at any pictures, and we just went, and it was so sick. It's like this whole not like a field, but it's almost like a big clearing in like a mountainous area, and a bunch of volcanoes like forever ago were just going off there like crazy.
Wow.
So all the leftover like magma and shit has turned into these fields of volcanic rock. So like when you're out there, it almost kind of looks like you are on the moon, and there's craters and shit everywhere.
Okay. That's crazy.
And it was one of the coolest places I've ever been in the US, and it was a complete like just by accident trip.
Yeah.
And they had a merch store, so I just bought like a ton of shit.
Yeah, it's funny because like geographically speaking, where I'm from, Calgary, Alberta, Canada, so we're just north of like Montana and Idaho. So like I feel like we're spoiled because I can drive 45 minutes west and be at like Banff National Park, and a little bit further you're at Lake Louise. Like,
Banff.
Yeah,
rocks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So it's like growing up, I grew up in the dead center of Canada, where it's like just the flattest of lands ever. So to be able to be this close to like that kind of shit is super cool. But like Montana and Idaho have like very dope national parks that I'm like wanting to get down to, just to be in those parts of the country because it's just so beautiful. So yeah.
After we went there, now I'm like, when we got home, I was like on the national park website looking at like every national park I had never heard of, because I was like, if this place was that badass, there's got to be more that we probably drive past on tour that we've never been to. And it's like,
oh, totally. Yeah. And it's like, I think it's more about thinking about what are the dope local coffee spots or record stores that like we can hit when we get into town versus like what are the cool scenic stuff that we can hit along the way. Obviously, every spot had like any band that does come through Calgary obviously hits Banff if they've never been there before. Yeah. That's a given. But yeah, it's pretty interesting on, if you're listening to this podcast and you want to shout out some dope national parks wherever you're from, drop those in the comments for sure.
Send them to me. We need new shit to do on tour. We're bored.
Yeah. Yes. All Americana stays the same. Just kidding. Don't come for me, coffee snobs. I'm just drinking a AHA myself to start my day, which is funny because I have gone on record on this podcast saying the peach honey flavor is the best, but I think I'm going to redact that and maybe correct the record that I think the orange grapefruit, if you can see that is the move. I've been on a grapefruit kick these last few months. So
anything that makes a grapefruit flavor is the grapefruit flavor is normally my favorite. Grapefruit White Claw. Oh, okay, it was my favorite for a while. I changed recently, but I love grapefruit flavor anything. I love those surf ones, the White Claw surfs.
I don't know if we have those in Canada yet.
They're like a fairly new thing here, and there's this one flavor. It's like an acai blueberry smash or something like that, and it's like the craziest White Claw ever. I love it. That
does sound crazy.
But I also can't drink beer, so I'm like a White Claw seltzer like
connoisseur. Got you.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. I've been a black cherry White Claw person through and through.
Oh, it's my least favorite.
Least favorite?
It tastes like TV static.
Damn. I'm gonna be haunted next time I have a black cherry. It's just like I take a sip and
it's like poltergeist juice.
Poltergeist juice. Man. Well, Mitchell, cheers to you, man. The vibes are already set for this episode, so very excited to do this pod.
Hell yeah.
So, Mitchell, any new guests that comes here on the show, I always like to get a bit of context about just how they got into heavy music in general. So whether that was like metalcore, hardcore, breakdowns, however you want to spin it, tell me about like the first times that you were just hearing about this shit.
I think I've definitely said this before, and it's weirdly specific, but it's very true to my character arc in life. When I was like, I want to say I was like 6 or 7 years old. My family like pretty much just gave me like no filter on like any media, so like I was just allowed to watch like R-rated movies and like play M-rated games and all that shit. And I was watching the original Resident Evil movie,
Okay.
like the Paul W.S. Anderson like OG one.
Hmm.
And in that movie there's a part where they play fucking, oh god, what Slipknot song is it? Hold on, I literally have to look it up so I don't
I'll
misquote this.
check it while Slipknot. Is it My Plague?
Yes, it's My Plague.
Yeah.
So there's a part in the movie where that song plays, and it's the most badass part of the movie. And then I realized later that the music video was like in the special features, but like at the time I like could not comprehend what it was. So like I would just like watch this music video like on repeat all the time, and I had no idea that it was like a band or anything. Like
You
I
you thought
literally
it was a
thought,
part of the movie.
yeah, I thought it was a part of the movie.
Mm.
And then I remember like about a year later, I realized what it was. I was like, oh, this is this band, Slipknot. And then that sent me down a whole rabbit hole of like finding shit like that, like Korn and Deftones and like all the bands from like that era. But I didn't super latch onto it like in the moment. I just like thought it was cool, became aware of it, but it wasn't like my whole like thing. And then a couple years later, we literally just on YouTube found the music video for The World's Best Friend Become Redefined by Chiodos.
Mm-hmm.
And through that we found like Devil Wears Prada and just like all those bands in the related videos, and that was what really set me down the breakdown path.
Right. Okay.
But I feel like I would not have been receptive to that if I hadn't found Slipknot on the Resident Evil DVD.
Yeah, because that I don't know why this came to mind, and this is a bit of a different scenario, but it I feel like it's worth noting. Many years ago, there was a band, and I don't stand by this band as far as being a good band, but I'm just using this as an example.
Yeah.
Do you remember the band The Great Commission? They were like,
absolutely.
Yeah. So they, I
Scream
think
the
I was,
prayer, baby.
yeah. So I remember following them because I was like a face down, like solid state hardcore kid growing up.
Yeah.
It was like, that's how I got into this whole world for me. And I remember that they announced that they were going to be in a Taylor Swift music video. And there's a music video of Taylor Swift. I'm going to find it, but,
This is some
but they're essentially playing in the background of like this part in the music video, and like it's so wild because as someone that understands this is an actual band that exists and they're like doing the whole like fucking crabcore breakdown movements, but like for anyone watching it was just like, oh, this is just a bunch of actors and kind of doing this thing. So
I can't believe you know about this.
Yeah, I need to find this shit.
That is insane.
It's oh man, so it's like I just don't want to search or YouTube Taylor Swift music video because that's gonna just have this endless
Yeah,
list.
there's gonna be like 100.
But this is like right when okay, this is bugging me.
You take time. I'm willing to wait for this.
I think it might, no, not You Belong With Me. It's like this is Taylor Swift's like
that era though.
Fuck you ex-boyfriend phase.
Yeah.
Of music. It's not Bad Blood. It's not. Oh man, hold on. Maybe Google will fare better. Taylor Swift, The Great Commission.
There's got to be like a Lambgo article or some bullshit about it.
Oh yeah, that's the top hit. It's a Lambgo article. Okay, so they performed in "I Knew You Were Trouble" music video.
What?
Yeah, that's a fucking banger. And not it's just like this is not a B-side shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it so seeing something like that, there's probably at least one person that maybe saw that video and was like, is this a real band? And they went down the rabbit hole.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
this long tangent or story is for me to just remind everyone that like there's no one way for people to find hardcore or heavy music or DIY music, whichever way you want to spin it. There's like these weird things where I'm sure a band like that, like, God, like, why the fuck are you spending time to be in this Taylor Swift music video as like this background, whatever? I think if you're looking it up, go to 258.
Yeah, because also I saw this band a couple times, but I remember like there was this band that I used to really like called In the Midst of Lions.
Yep.
And I remember like going to see them, and Great Commission like played like right after them. I think it was actually that Scream the Prayer tour, which I haven't thought about in years. I can't believe that was a thing. Okay, yo.
I have a feeling this podcast. It's like all the people mosh pitting, and then Taylor Swift's looking at the.
Like, in what world does this happen or exist?
I know.
Yeah, that's them.
to me, that's the last.
My girlfriend's gonna fucking lose her mind when I show her this later.
Oh man, yeah. Like, again, I think it's just so funny that you are watching this movie and then they had it as a feature that you could watch the music video, because that was a common thing where I think there was certain music videos where their official music videos would intersplice movie. Like I think Linkin
exactly
Park had like a version of their music video that had all the Transformers shit in there as well.
Oh, for sure. Those, because like some of their biggest songs were those movies that they did for those Transformers movies.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't What I Done like one of those or whatever?
Yeah.
It's
so funny. I'm talking about this now
with exactly what you're talking about with that Slipknot song.
Yeah, but it's so funny. Like I'm on a few podcasts ago. I was on Lord of the Rings lore YouTube videos, and now I'm on Transformers lore YouTube videos explained. And there's this one guy that anytime he talks about the moment where after like the first Transformers movie, it's like, yeah, then Optimus Prime calls all Autobots to come to Earth and listen to Linkin Park, and then it cues that part like before the credits scene comes in.
Yeah.
So again, I just think it's cool that there are certain weird little things that, like the producers or whoever's in charge of deciding what goes on the Resident Evil DVD is like, why are we going to put this music video on? They're like, fuck it. Who knows what could happen? And then, that causes you to discover it and then be in this, arguably big band called VARIALS, and, the rest is history. So I love that.
It is pretty crazy. And it's every time I tell somebody about it, I'm always like, this sounds so bizarre, but like, it's just funny how things actually happen like that.
Well, I just think it's just breadcrumb trails, right? It's like leading people to be able to decide that. And, there are people where it's a Tony Hawk soundtrack or it's a fucking, yeah. And I don't know. It's like nowadays I think about, a few years ago, I went to like an NHL game with my dad, and I heard this is when like Bring Me the Horizon was like really like, oh, like they're a huge band now, and their music was playing over the intercom. And for my dad, he was like, oh, this band sounds kind of cool, but I was freaking out because again, that's like, who knows, someone hearing that and they're like, Shazamming it, and then they're 10 years later and playing in a huge band. So it's. The lore is crazy, and I get excited about it.
No, it's funny that you bring up Bring Me too, because that's like, I always tell people that they're like my main like longtime influence, because I feel like they're the only band that's like kept my attention since like I first found scene music like till now. You know what I mean? So yeah.
So we have some origin points as far as how you're discovering this shit. Tell me about the origin of VARIALS as a band. Like, were there a couple bands leading up to that, to you starting that? Because that band started when y'all were like hella young, as far as like you know, being fresh out of high school, right?
Yeah. It's funny because I was not originally in the band when it formed.
Okay.
But me and Mike, the bass player, we were in another local band together.
Mhm.
So like they were always doing stuff with me and Mike's other band. Like half the shows that either band would play would usually be together.
Mhm.
And it was cool because I got to know all of them super well, and then I ended up helping them like record some stuff. So it always kind of felt like I was involved with them.
Sure.
And then when they did like their first proper, like we're going all the way to the West Coast tour, they asked me to come fill in on guitar. I was touring with a different band at that point, so I didn't have anything going on in the time frame, so I went with them.
Mhm.
And then about halfway through that tour, I wanted to leave the band that I was with currently, and they decided that they wanted to like fill the position I was filling in for, and they were like, "Well, makes the most sense if you do it." And I was
Right.
like, "Yeah, I'm down."
Hmm.
And then, yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't anticipate that it would be that I'd be doing the singing now at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah, and we'll get to that eventually, but yeah, it's funny, a similar situation where it's like, oh, I guess this makes the most sense, and then, you know, maybe fast forward multiple years later, it's like maybe this makes the most sense for me to do vocals. But again,
Exactly.
that will be a talking point later in the episode. Something I guess like this is definitely earlier days because, you know, off of the first release was some of the first Varials music that I was hearing, but the first time I actually how I found out about you guys was there was a nude mosher at a show you guys were playing, and it
Yeah.
like blew up online. And for me, I'm like, this is the first time I've ever even thought that that's something that that I guess people can do. So I was curious if you could like think back to that moment, and like at the time, I'm when those shows are happening and those moments are happening, you're not thinking of like, oh, this is gonna blow up and explode our band, but it
Yeah.
seems like it had a bit of an effect.
Oh, dude, it had a huge effect. Like I feel like we didn't even realize it at the time when it happened. And the funny thing was, I didn't play that show. I
Okay,
wasn't in the band when it happened, but I was like there
you were at the
watching.
show.
Yeah.
Okay,
And fucking like I think it was a little bit less than a year after that when I filled in on that tour and everything happened.
right.
But like when I filled in was when they started seeing um the reaction to that video.
Mm,
Because like it got a little bit of traction when the music video first came out and everything, but then they started like getting all the emails and shit being like, "Oh, we're going to use it on ridiculousness and like all this stuff."
sure.
And I remember in the moment, like it was all just like happening and we didn't really think about it. But then in hindsight, a couple years later, we were like, wait, that definitely like kind of blew up the band.
Right.
And at the time, we just didn't think about it because we were so busy like working on music and just like
Doing
making
regular
sure that
band
we're
things. Yeah.
doing shit.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's funny to think about now because it definitely was like a bigger thing than any of us perceived, I think. Because like I never even saw the actual clip from Ridiculousness
Mhm.
until like probably 2 or 3 years ago because my fucking grandpa loves Ridiculousness and literally like he like recorded it like on the Comcast box. And
Oh
then
my gosh.
I was like at their house for a holiday or something, and he was like, "Oh, I recorded this," and I was like, "Holy shit, I never saw it."
Pull it up on
And
the DVR, Grandpa.
yeah, and then there it was, and also hilariously, this was like when MGK was like getting really fucking popular,
Sure.
and I didn't realize he was like the guest on the show that day. So it's like,
Oh,
yeah, so it's like them and
what?
MGK like reacting to the video, and I was just like, okay, this is fucking hilarious. Like, so yeah,
That
it's
video was
funny.
probably the thing to be like, well, maybe I as MGK should not do a metalcore record, and maybe I should focus on a different genre of music
Yeah, right.
to rip off of.
And then, but it was funny because like once I started thinking about it more in hindsight, I was like, yeah, like that was literally when everything like started happening. Like that was when the band got a manager. That was when, we started getting hit up by Fearless
Right.
and other labels and stuff like that. So
So so take me back to like again, you're not in the band at this point, but you're at this show. Like,
yeah,
and we're not trying to put, Naked Mosher guy on blast here, but like is this a normal occurrence for this person,
no,
or is there like certain things at play that like prompted a strip crowd kill session?
it honestly, I don't even know if there was any lead up to it. I think um he may have said to somebody in the band, "I'm gonna get naked" or something like that before the show, maybe. But
Sure.
like, I don't think anyone really saw it coming,
Sure.
and it was just by pure luck that like they were filming the show for that music video,
Right.
and that also was like probably the end all be all local show that we ever had. So like it was already just like going balls to the wall insane in there because
Pun
like
intended.
yeah, like that was yeah. And
Balls to
fucking
the wall.
balls
Put
to the
that on a
wall.
hardcore shirt.
But he
Just a
yeah,
live shot.
I just remember like watching that whole show and being like, we're never having a fucking show here again. And I don't think we did. I think that
Right.
was maybe the last one. There might have been one more, but oh, dude, we fucked that place up.
Mhm. It again is like I'm not sure how much you know about this, but like in addition to doing podcasts, we also like film, live shows, festivals, and it's to me it's such an important thing to see how certain bands can be documented in certain ways and have moments that are like captured and like properly shared out through like a channel like ours or Hey 56 or 197 Media. Um but yeah, like I don't downplay it because I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, we played bad" or like whatever, but you never know that like it could be something as kooky and crazy as someone like naked moshing out of pure just like I'm a goofball, but it could
Yeah.
also be the point of like a vocalist, it's almost like when there's moments of a set where there's like a technical difficulty or a guitar string like change up or whatever, and then the vocalist is like a bit under the pressure to fill that space, so they
Yeah.
like say something that like really hits home with a lot of people. And again, if that's filmed and it's shared, then people find like meaning in that and they share it, and that could be the thing for a band. So I don't know, it's cool as an archivist to see how that had an impact in and not like your guys' overall success, but just getting to more eyes. Because again, it was like,
I think it did. I think it did have a big play in the overall success, honestly.
mhm.
I'll admit it.
Yeah, naked. It's not, the whole thing is like we're not saying this all to encourage more people to naked mosh.
No.
But we're not saying that.
I'm not telling you to not do anything or do anything, but I don't think that would work the same now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the thing too, where it's like maybe the timing was just right. Where if it was happening in 2022, I think if anything, it would like maybe be a negative thing for the band versus
Oh,
a positive.
no, yeah, for sure. And like the other thing too is like it was just like such a hilarious like time and place thing that like I don't think anyone saw coming.
Mhm.
And like it's just so insane like looking back at it and being like he really just randomly was like I'm gonna do this. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. Um,
Also, I just realized I think my audio has been like kind of clipping this whole time. Do I sound okay to you?
you sound fine on our end.
Okay. You want me to turn it down a little bit or do you think it's all good?
I think you're good.
Okay, word.
Yeah. Because then if you change it, then I gotta like go and post and adjust that
Yep,
bullshit. But yeah.
I got you.
Um, well, okay, so I think something that maybe is a good like kind of segue kind of point. Um, you know, Varials as a band, I think this happens with any band as they grow and they get new audiences. Like, there's more fans that are like coming to your show and discovering this kind of music, and
Yeah.
you almost become not necessarily a gateway band, but you're like pulling new people. But at the same time, some of those new people that are coming in might not know the ways of doing things within like a DIY or a hardcore or a heavy music scene. So something that was interesting to me when I was like researching for this is like you got in a spat with someone on Reddit about like crowd killing and like all that kind of stuff. And I think and I'm not bringing that up in a sense for you to like defend yourself or anything like that. I just think it's
Oh, no,
interesting
for
as
sure.
a band that is on like a record label like Fearless and it is bringing those new people in. But, you know, going back to the early days of the band, you know, you guys are playing very DIY shows. You guys have like very violent pits. So, like, what is that like? Is that an annoyance to be like, oh, we have to be the people to educate certain people when it comes to like this is the way that like people will react when we play these, like we're not playing like softer music where you can kind of like, you know, do that kind of stuff. Like, does that
Yeah.
make sense what I'm asking?
No, yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, um, on the topic of the Redditors, I think it's funny that I feel like I have to teach them that the internet is a joke, even though they're all like addicted to Reddit.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
I think that's more annoying than having to deal with like any single person ever at a show. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but to your actual question, sorry, Redditors.
No, that's
Um,
fine.
I honestly, I think it's just one of those things that like once we started doing those less DIY tours, like we definitely saw it for the first time when we toured with Wage War. We
Okay.
were like joking the whole tour that it was like the small group of our fans versus every Wage War fan in the venue. Because like somebody would make like one like quick false like fucking American Legion move and it was
Mhm.
like every eye on the building was on this man. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
How dare you spin
Yeah.
kick at me? Yeah, yeah.
And honestly, I thought it was fucking really fucking funny at first. And then I think as we went on, it was never like an annoyance. It was always just like something that kind of we just thought was funny because um, like there is so many people who have like never been to those kind of shows before, and I don't. I kind of like that there's like a shock there to them. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
Because like
totally. Yeah.
we've always said that we like doing those more like mainstream like metalcore tours because we like playing in front of those people that possibly haven't seen a band that is as heavy as us or acts like us.
Mhm.
Because like especially on the tour that we just did in the spring with All That Remains, like we've never played to a crowd of that age range before,
Mhm.
and some of the comments that we got online were literally like hilarious. Like I can't remember what post it was on, but there was like this like 40-year-old dude that commented on it being like, these guys were like so aggressive and demanding on stage and they were just like too much, and I was like, yeah, that's what I want you to think. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like I like having just like that kind of like thing you've never seen before value to it, because
Mhm.
I feel like we've played so many of those DIY shows and tours at this point that like I know what I'm gonna get there. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
It's dope. But I think like, especially like on the topic of like progressing the band forward, just like playing again, like playing in front of people who haven't experienced something like that, it's way more worth dealing with some of the bullshit there to get the value out of it from the other people who are enjoying it and not, complaining or like not fully getting it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, there's so many like examples of bands that like well, first off, like there once you're like established within your own like, you know, DIY or hardcore scene, there's like still thousands of if not hundreds of thousands of people who like music and like going to shows and will buy your records and do this and probably will like it that don't know who you are. That like are
Yeah.
just not either in the age bracket where they're going to shows anymore like on a consistent basis, or they're too young and maybe there's not as much of an all ages push within their local scene. So like, yeah, there's bands like, Stick to Your Guns or Knock Loose that have like really pushed to like other markets. And I think with an example like Knocked is like, there was a festival that they played up here in Canada where it was like, by the time that they were headlining, but at the time that they were on stage, it's like, oh, this is a Knocked Loose crowd. Because the first half of the day is like all hardcore kids, people that are pitting hard as fuck. And then like Knocked Loose comes, it's like, okay, now we're into push pit mode. And it is a thing where, I would hear from friends who were like, because it is always this thing where it's like, we coexist, but it's like, oh, I can't throw down to this band anymore because of this kind of scenario. And I think there was a conversation being like, oh yeah, the vibe is all off. And then someone overheard him say that. He's like, oh yeah, I agree. All these people earlier just fucking slam dancing and do this. Yeah, totally. The vibe is right now. It's like, no, we're like literally talking about you, bro. But like Knocked Loose as a band, as an example, is like, they're still a band that's like, they're not going to, it's not on the band as far as who they're attracting to the shows. It's like, that's just the name of the game when you're like, your band grows and you're attracting new people. And the hope is that, someone might take a spin kick or a fist to the face and maybe they dive into harder music, or you're just going to go about it and complain on Reddit or online or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And, there's many 6-month phases when it comes to like getting really involved in that, or, they'll only go and listen to the records. But, a band that also pioneers and goes out and like really tries to bring in those new fans into the hardcore world is like a band like Terror, where they'll play like to like metalheads who were like, we're just going to be like doing like this and nothing pit wise. But like when Scott came on the show, he was telling me like Terror would play somewhere and then go 5 years later and someone would come up and be like, the first time I saw you, I had like long hair. I had like a fucking like jean jacket with like all the prints everywhere. And your band turned me into a hardcore kid. So I think that's cool as well.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's sick.
Yeah. So I think it's like, it's not on any band as far as that, but yeah, it's like you need to have bands that kind of like push, if it's a hardcore show that has hardcore bands on the bill, yeah, like things should get a little hardcore. And if you're not for it, then you should like be a little self-aware where you're standing.
Yeah, exactly. That's my that was always my whole thing. Was it was just like, I feel like everybody should be pretty aware of what's going on around them at a show. If you're not, I don't know what you're paying attention to, but like I've literally never been in a position at a show that I didn't want to be in. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like if some shit starts going on around me that I don't like, I just move.
Right.
It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But like I don't. Some people just like, I guess really really won't get the fuck out of the way, and that's another problem. But yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because on that same festival, Inclination was playing, so there may be like 2 slots behind Knocked Loose. And, Inclination, pretty hard band. But still, it's like, for fans of the pure noise, Knocked Loose connections there. Do you know a band called Apex Predator?
I've heard of them.
Yeah, so there's a guy, his name is Casey.
Up on Spotify and jammed, but like I just can't remember.
Yeah, so Casey, the singer of that band, is like, he's got a lot of weight to throw around when he stage dives. And the way he stage dives is just kind of like cartwheels, but like it's like a wrecking ball coming down on you. And I would see him do that and like take out like 4 or 5 kids.
Oh my God.
And the start of the Inclination set, I see him get up on stage left and he's starting to crawl over. And I was like not planning on doing anything. And I was like, I need to stage dive going the opposite way just so I don't have to catch Casey.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like get on stage, duck around him. But yeah, and then I just like chilled on that side of the stage for the rest of the set. So it's So for the people listening, be a little self-aware. Take some ownership. Don't just like go and try to like talk shit on a band because you were moshed on versus the moshie, if that makes sense.
Yep. I'm an ex-troll too, so like I just got I just got to stay off Reddit
Right.
now. That's yeah.
So, going into like some of the newer stuff that has been going on within the Varials universe, like obviously like a big talking point for anyone who's been a fan of the band since day one is now that you're on the mic. And so I wanted to talk about like, you know, once Travis left, there was kind of like, I remember when Matt from Boundaries came on, we talked about how he was like filling in. And I think there was also a time where Brendan from Counterparts was also doing that.
Yep.
So when was the time where you're like, we have to comeback kid it, as far as like me moving from guitar to vocals and and start to do that as the future of the band?
I mean, we went through a lot of different people, like audition wise. A couple of them got pretty serious and then like very serious, and every time it just wouldn't work out for a variety of reasons. And after, I want to say it was like, honestly, like try number 4, we hit a real serious point of frustration, and we were all pretty much just like, okay, like, are we really gonna find another like random person and like bring them out here, start like try to vibe with them, like make sure they can, do what they need to do on these songs, blah blah blah. Like, it was a whole fucking thing every time we did it, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then I can't really remember like exactly the conversation, but I just remember our guitar player and bass player James and Mike just being like, just try it. And then I did it, and we were like, okay, this could work. And we just kept doing more and more of it, and every time we did it, it was just better and better. And we just pretty much trial and errored it with me until we got to a point where we were like, this whole song sounds like it was professionally done.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then it just kind of like took me a little bit to like muster up the, okay, this does sound good thing in my brain.
Sure.
And yeah, we were like, all right, this makes the most sense. And then we were also able to get back the person that I replaced.
Oh, okay. So that's the guy who's in your old spot now.
Yeah.
Which is his original spot. Interesting.
Yes. So it's like, it's the original like musicians in the band, just now I'm on vocals.
Yeah. And like, in past years, like you were still doing like backup vocals. I would see in like live videos and things like that.
I did
so
a
it
couple
wasn't like
vocals in Canada too, and that was like a big part of my thinking of like, all right, well, I was able to do whole shows screaming. So I think if I hadn't done that, it would have been a little bit of a harder of a sell.
Yeah.
For me.
Totally.
But,
yeah. Because it's like, it's not even just like building up the stamina like vocally to be doing that, but it's also like, oh, how am I maneuvering through these songs and like introducing them when we're doing it in a live setting, for sure.
Yeah. No, it's not a small undertaking doing vocals for a band. Like, I feel like a lot of people think it's like the easiest job, and I would say that drummer is the hardest, but vocals is definitely second to drumming, in my opinion. Bass players and guitar players, you got it so easy, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah, bass, like playing bass is almost like, to me, is like the most fun that you can have in a band, because it's so like just jump around, do whatever, unless you're like so meticulous on being like super locked in with the drums. But even then, it's not even like the most taxing thing.
Yep.
I think
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's all good. I was just gonna say, like, I agree with you that I think I 50-50 flip on vocalists having the hardest job or drummers having the hardest job. I think vocalists have the hardest job as it comes to their like physical undertaking, and I think drummers have the hardest job when it comes to just like the actual like what it actually takes to like set your drums up and then tear it down after your 20 minute set and move all that bullshit. replace things when, shit breaks. Like,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
it's the most expensive by far. I played drums in like all my original local bands that I was in,
Mm.
and I immediately was like, this is gonna become a fucking nightmare. So I was like, I'm playing guitar, I'm
Yeah,
done
yeah,
with it.
yeah. Fuck this.
Yeah. But I never played bass in a band, but then I randomly filled in for Gideon on bass on this one tour that they were on with us.
Okay.
And I always tell people that that was the most fun I ever had on stage. Like, playing bass is just the sickest because like it's easy. Like, let's
Yeah.
be real, it's pretty easy unless you're on some crazy fucking jazz shit. And like just also like Gideon's like style of just like those like bouncy like chuggy
Abs-
breakdowns. It was
absolutely.
just so much fun to fucking get really stoned and just
Yeah.
like stare at their drummer and just like lock
Oh
in.
yeah,
So
just
much
like
fucking
you're just
fun.
connecting with Jake, and you're just like
Dude, yeah.
fucking.
He's
Oh
like
man.
he's one of the best drummers I've ever played with too. That was seriously fun.
I mean, you're saying this all to like someone that has Gideon lyrics tattooed on his feet.
Oh hell
Listen to
yeah.
Cost like the day it came out. Gideon stayed at my house when they were touring with 100th back in like 2013. Like I'm a
Hell yeah.
forever fan of that band. Um, I've been trying to get like members on the podcast, but and it will happen one day. But I think
For
that
sure.
it's almost funny how it's like all of Gideon minus their singer and also plays in another band that's like for
Yeah.
a rapper. So
Yeah, he's actually he's one of my good friends. His name is Matt. He's 936.
yeah.
He yeah, it was funny because I saw them all like playing with him, and then they realized like, wait, he like lives near Mitch. So
Mhm.
then like, well, I just like randomly like connected with this guy, and he's fucking sick, and he's really he's given them a really cool opportunity. They've been crushing it with him. It's really cool.
Yeah. So Mitchell, a question that I always like to ask any guest who comes on the show that has like a big body of work, a lot of like really like popular songs, but also a lot of songs that might need a little bit more love and shine a light on. So, in your opinion, what is the most overrated Varial song, and what is the most underrated Varial song?
Oh man. Oh man.
And again, you could actually go at this multiple ways, playing guitar and now doing vocals in the band, because I've asked this question to the same band in different members and they give different answers, because it's like, I don't like playing this song live on guitar,
Yep.
or because it's more vocally favored song, or it's the opposite. So where's your mind go with that?
I think people are gonna fucking hate me for this. I think. Sorry, I just fucked up something with my foot. I think the most overrated Varial song is "Anything to Numb."
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I just don't like playing that song live. Never really have.
For both
And
guitar and vocals?
yeah, it's fun
Oh,
on
okay.
vocals, because it's fun on vocals because it's one of the biggest songs.
Sure. Obviously.
But like the actual song itself, I was never a huge fan of it. And I there's just other songs on Pain Again that I think achieve the same thing but better, that weren't put on a pedestal.
Mm.
And I feel like if we had switched it out for something else, it would have been either just as big as Anything to Numb, or maybe bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff off Pain Again that I thought like could have had a better light shined on it, if that makes sense. That I think that was like a big learning point for me too, where I was like, I need to be more vocal and opinionated about like what songs I think should be singles. Because then in Darkness, I feel like that was when we chose like everything almost correct.
Okay.
But my most underrated Varial song is on In Darkness, which is Death Song.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good pick.
We butted heads over that song so much as a band, and I forget what happened, but there was like some like deal that was made where it was like, all right, I'll like put that song on the album if we can also do this, which was like something that maybe I didn't want,
Sure.
but the agreement was met and we were
There
like,
was a
okay, cool.
compromise of some kind. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And to be fair, the main argument I think was that like the album was long as fuck. Because it is like a 40, like 2-minute album or something like that.
Mhm.
But I was just like, who cares? It's just like more songs, you know what I mean? Like I don't think anyone's really gonna mind there being more music.
Right.
But I really wish that we had put that song out as like a single or something.
Hmm.
Because I feel like that song was what we wanted to do moving forward, literally. Like
Right.
that was like one of the last things that we wrote for In Darkness. That song was probably one of the most collaborative things that we worked on that album, like
Mhm.
together. And it like we were so hyped on it in the moment. And then when we started picking stuff, that was when people were saying like, oh, like I don't really like this anymore. But then I think it's funny because where we ended up on the new album, I feel like the only song on In Darkness that really sounds a lot like our new stuff is that song.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, those are good picks. I think maybe something that I wanted to personally add in, and kind of give you props and kudos. I really liked how in the first track, the New Damnation off of Pain Again, I liked how when I would watch live videos of you guys just would play the intro of that
Yeah.
as an intro. And then,
Yeah.
obviously when the record came out, it was like, oh, this whole thing. So I've definitely taken inspiration of that. So for my band's next release, we have played shows just off of like the first riff of that song, and then once that comes out. So I wanted
Oh
to
yeah.
say that helped influence me, because I thought that was a really it's
Yeah.
like it's such a nice like build up part for sure.
I love doing stuff like that where it's just like, okay, we have some part that's sick as hell that we know we're gonna put on some song on the new album. So just like rip it out live and play it. Cause like I feel like people retain that way more than you think, especially because like people watch a lot of live sets on YouTube and shit like that.
Right.
So then if they're listening to the record and they hear something that they've seen in a live video or saw live, like it kind of like clicks a little like special moment in their brain almost where they're like, oh shit, it's that crazy heavy part from the
Right.
set.
Yeah.
And now it's in this song. You know what I mean? Like
The amount of YouTube
I've
comments
been in
I
that
get,
position
like
too.
from people
Yeah.
being like, "Yo, this is a new song," or like, "This is years later," and people are connecting it back to it. Yeah,
I
and
remember like when I was younger, Devil Wears Prada did it. I saw them one time when they were touring off Plagues,
Mhm.
and they opened with the beginning breakdown of Big Wiggly Style. And the
Oh,
song
sick.
wasn't out yet, but
Right.
like I saw that set, and then I remember watching it over and over again on YouTube because like that fucking breakdown was so sick.
Mhm.
And then a year later, the album comes out, and I was like, oh shit, like it's this song.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's just cool for bands to actually like not double down, but just like really think about the lore of their band. Cause
For
like
sure.
there's like the music side of it, there's like the touring, there's the art. Like to me, like growing up when I would play video games and there's all these like Easter eggs that are just left in different parts of levels
Yeah.
or different things like that. Like that's where nerdy like Spencer like really gets obsessed. So it's the same thing with bands where
Very
it's
sick.
like, when they're dropping like, even just like it's so simple, but for bands just to even drop like a certain emoji that's like tied around this release, it's like, it gets your brain going because you
Yeah. Oh,
naturally as
something.
a human try to fill in the blanks there.
Yeah.
So speaking of lore and things related to bands, I know like another thing that you've talked about on other interviews, and is definitely a part of like Varials as a whole, is like how the attention to detail and like how much you guys like sink in for merch and like, being not just like phoning that in, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, for
So
sure.
like were there specific bands in the early days that like helped inspired you to do that, or was it out of like, man, I don't want to do a fucking, band logo here and live shot on the back? Like what kind of prompted that?
I mean, I got to give most of the credit for that to our bass player Mike. He's the primary curator slash like designer of our merch. He does do a good chunk of it himself, and he outsources another good chunk of it from other people.
Sure.
But I feel like he's always just like had a good eye of like making stuff that is fresh and cool and not like other band merch.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, I feel like a lot of the like the thought behind like putting emphasis on merch and not just having it be like a passive thing honestly kind of came from bands like Hundredth and like Counterparts like in the early days, because like there's a couple more bands that I'm forgetting, but like we would we were aware that those bands merch was something that was more special and more curated, not only because we liked it, but like we could see at the shows that those bands were selling much more than the other band on the tour. And this is like before we were even touring or doing anything really serious yet. So I feel like because we saw things like that happen, we were just kind of well aware going into it, like, okay, this is what we need to do. And honestly, like the merch, like we don't really like aim to hit like any certain style or anything like that. It's literally just stuff that we pick because we're like, we would wear that. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
Like I could say that the only reason that there's merch that we have that I wouldn't wear is because I hate wearing any shirt or pants or anything that is the color red. It just looks like fucking shit on me. But like I would wear literally anything that we have ever made if some of the things just weren't printed on red.
Right. And yeah, and like the color theme of this next record seems to be red, so you're like, you won't catch me wearing any of that. Yeah. I totally agree. Like Counterparts and Hundredth, like definitely were the bands early on that like were really like, okay, this isn't just something that's a box to check. Like we can really be creative and also like be consistent is the other thing that was really
Bring Me the Horizon's another crazy example that I didn't think of, because like I remember like a couple years ago, like when you were saying earlier, when they were like really being like pushed as like the biggest fucking band in the world.
Yeah.
There was literally a Bring Me the Horizon like death metal logo shirt like in H&M.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember we saw that and we were like, okay, like people are making merch that just looks like H&M stuff now. Like people want stuff that looks like shit you're getting like from the mall. That's like not just a typical band shirt. And like their merch over like the course of their entire career has been insane. Like,
yeah.
And then they rebranded all of their merch into an actual fucking like clothing company, like that Horizon Supply Co. thing. It's just like, yeah, that's kind of like the same thing that we aim to hit, where it's just like it feels like someone could walk into a store, see a Varial shirt and buy it just because it looks cool, not even realizing it's a band.
Yeah. Or watch a movie like Resident Evil and not even know there's a music video within the DVD.
Exactly. Yeah. And then ironically, the fucking like UK like H&M ripoff company or whatever the hell it's called, I forget what the name of the company is, but it's like essentially H&M, but it's only in the UK. They literally ripped off a bunch of our designs, printed them, and sold them in their stores, and we had to cease and desist them to get.
Really? My. Okay. Whoa. So, how are you finding out about that? Like, what? Paint the picture.
Someone literally just like tweeted it at us, and they were like, "Yo, Varials, like, why are you guys selling merch on like this?" And I had never heard of the company before,
right?
And then I looked it up, and I was like, "Oh, okay, so this is like a chain store of like H&M style clothes that's all over the UK." And they had shirts that said like Varials in Darkness, like all this shit that was like in all of their stores that they were actively selling.
Oh my. I'm trying to Google if like, is there like was there an article or anything around this?
I don't think so, because it wasn't like anything that really got like blown up into like a news story or anything. It was literally just like someone sent it to us. We sent it to our Fearless and our manager, and then they were just like, okay, we're going to handle it. And then for a second, we thought that we were actually going to get the shirts. Like,
yo, give us our stock. We're
we were stoked for a second because we were like, holy shit, like we're about to get a bunch of merch that we didn't pay for that we can sell.
Right.
But then I can't remember exactly what happened, but it was like something along the lines of like, shipping it like from the UK, like wouldn't even
Sure.
be worth it.
Yeah.
So I think that honestly, it was probably all like fucking put in those like, like it was probably like sold in like fucking TJ Maxx or some shit like that. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, it's one thing if there's companies that are like ripping designs, that can get snuffed out eventually. But like if it has your guys' band name on it, it's like, are you guys trying to like, be shitty immediately? Like and just,
yeah,
get the rug pulled from under you? Yeah, it's such a that's
insane,
such a
man.
weird practice.
But it was also almost like a validation check though, because we were like, okay,
We're
if a
doing we're
store,
doing a good enough
yeah,
job that UK
that
H&M
the
is trying to
literal
like
like store took our shit,
bite
like
our
bro.
shit. Yeah, that's so funny. I think like rips like that, like when it comes to band stuff, like you see even bigger bands like A Day to Remember or Parkway Drive, where they'll go tour places like where they like places in like South America or like, really crazy like Eastern countries where they're like selling rips outside the show. But it's like that's how they're like putting food on the table for their families versus
Dude,
like
I
these giant
fucking
corporations that are like,
fucking
you don't need this extra penny on your
I
thing.
somewhere in my basement, I have a box that's like full of like those parking lot concert shirts because
Right.
I used to go to like a bunch of shows in Philly at like the stadiums with my dad when I was younger,
Mhm.
and when we would be leaving, there would always be someone in the parking lot selling like that insane horrible print like
For
rip off
Metallica or
shirt.
Ozzy
Yeah,
Osbourne or whatever.
and I would just whip out a 5 every time and just be like, and every time they would sell me one for $5. Like
Dude, let's
it's so
go.
fun. I have some hilarious ones. I should whip those out actually and wear them on tour. I bet you they'd probably be like in style now.
Yeah, totally. Um,
Also, the more I look at you, the more I realize you look a lot like Eric Easterday, our old photographer.
really?
You know who he is?
I love Eric. He's been on the show before. I'm a big fan of
Oh,
his.
really?
Yeah.
Oh
He
shit! I gotta listen to his episode. I didn't realize you had
he
him on your show. That's
yeah,
awesome.
he was like very early. I think season 1 for sure.
I think
Honestly,
it's like the mustache and the glasses, but like I keep looking at you, I'm just like Jesus. It looks like I'm talking to
okay, yeah.
Peanut.
So he was episode 64.
Okay.
I'll send it to you after we're done here.
Oh
But
yeah.
I take that as a high compliment because I love Eric.
Oh yeah. He's
And
one of my favorite people of all time.
the glasses are fairly new in my,
Okay.
style repertoire. The mustache is very new. I just committed to
I
that.
like it.
I
like
appreciate
everything.
that. If anyone thinks I look like Eric Easterday, I consider that a high compliment because I love that man. So
Shout out Peanut. I love you and I
yeah,
miss
yeah.
you.
Speaking of Eric, I know like that was like you guys have worked with him a ton. So like was
Yeah.
he the like I don't know if he's necessarily like the person that's handling a lot of the newer stuff right now. But was he kind of the person to help make it make sense for you guys to invest in the visuals as much as you did on Pain Again and In Darkness?
I mean, so Pain Again was almost entirely Max Moore.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Max also has come on the show. We've talked about those music videos as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
get
he
those two heads mixed up
for
because they're
sure.
both very talented individuals.
I feel you know, but yeah, it's but yeah, he like Max did the like most of the music videos for that, and then oh shit. I think Eric did the Colder Brother live video, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the first video that he did for us. And that was like when he was in like the height of his touring era with us. Because he came on every tour that we did from 2017 until the end of 2019, I believe.
Yeah.
Like he was like with us for almost 2 years straight. Like he was essential to our crew at that time, and he had a lot of influence in a good way. And we knew that we wanted to do crazy shit for In Darkness because we had a larger video budget for it.
Mhm.
So it became one of those things where it was like, all right, if we kind of give Eric the reins here and let him like do all this crazy shit that he's never done before, but he can probably pull off, we could do a bunch of ridiculous stuff because he was, willing to take a little bit less like pay than like Max Moore
Yeah.
or people of that caliber would, just to, do it alongside us and like make it, this collective kind of like vision that we all wanted.
Right.
And it definitely would have been way different if we didn't have him. We would not have been able to do, we probably, with the amount of money that we had, we would have only been able to do probably like 1.5 of those videos.
Sure. And y'all did 4.
And we did 4, and he just crushed it. And I feel like that was almost like a proving ground for him, because like I think that was one of the first times he had been given like a real like full like label budget to like do something.
Right.
And I think it shows that he really like gave that everything that he had. And he was sending us like updates like the whole ride along it, and it was awesome. I think like doing that stuff was probably the most fun that I ever had, organizing and planning like videos and visual shoots.
Right. Yeah. I think I totally agree that those videos, those series of videos that Eric did for y'all, definitely I think were the reference point that a lot of people either reached out to him, whether it was like a band like Boundaries or he's done work for so many people. But yeah, he's such a talented individual. So Eric, if you're listening, I love you. You're the best. It's really cool for any creative person to have an opportunity with a band that they like are friends with, that there can be like a bit of a upward trajectory as far as like, hey, let me scratch your back, and then like you're giving me the song to make these videos to, and and vice versa. So
Eric also made the album art and like all the stuff for our new album, like the booklet and everything is designed by him.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember who I believe that he collaborated with somebody on the actual front cover of the album. And he also did the video for the first song with me on vocals, the Cycle of Violence video. That was him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So
he's still there, but he's not doing the whole scope this time.
Yeah. And like you gotta, every release you gotta change it up a little bit and try out different things.
And honestly, we probably would have had him do more, but he's become like Gojira's like almost like full-time touring photographer.
Oh, really?
And yeah.
Damn, Eric. Okay, bro.
Yeah.
Let's go.
He's just been doing that, and like we're just fucking so happy for him, because it's like, it's fucking Gojira.
Totally. Yeah. And yeah, it's like people should know when there's those moments to like work together, but like at the same time, like no one is owed anything, nor should someone stay in one place. You should always chase different opportunities. So
leveled up.
Good for him. But going back to like the new music, because you were alluding to some of that stuff, like what at this point in the time of recording this episode, you guys have dropped 3 songs.
Yep.
So you were mentioning that there's the underrated song that you said off of In Darkness that's like a lot closer. So like, as you guys as a band are evolving, not only just on the visual side, but also obviously the sonic side, which I believe all bands should evolve. Like where have you, as now sitting in the seat of like the lyricists and the vocalists, like where have you wanted to push and go with this project now?
I mean, pretty much like everything that we've done in the past that has been my favorite stuff that the band has done, specifically citing like Death Song, I Suffocate, I think falls into this category that I'm going to elaborate on.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably like EDA also can fall into this category, where I feel like there's moments that we've hit that have just been like more immersive and more visceral than other stuff that we've done.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's kind of like the point that we've been missing a little bit, where I feel like we have on those two albums, we have these moments of like greatness where it's like, holy fuck, this is insane and it sounds fucking crazy. But then right after it's like, you know what I mean? And like there's like a filler song that you don't really get much out of, or something that just kind of like throws off the vibe. So I really just wanted to focus on making this whole thing just like a front to back, like listen to the whole thing, and it never stops being crazier and crazier the whole time.
Sure.
Instead of kind of being like these peaks and valleys kind of thing, I really like I tried to design this album and the music videos and everything so that it just feels like it keeps getting crazier.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like once the album is out and people can give it a full listen, I feel like they'll understand more of why we did a song that's like almost all singing. And I think they'll just realize that there is also something for every Varials fan on the album. Like we're not really like, I don't think that we're pushing this into a direction that's like completely different. I think that we're just like pushing it into a direction that there's something that everybody can enjoy while we also enjoy it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You're, instead of like, okay, we're going over here now, you're just expanding what's already been established, which is pushing into
Exactly.
new boundaries, but it's still playing on the things that have already been established and that work.
Yeah, and like I don't think that that we're necessarily like doing anything vastly different or crazy on this album. I
Mm-hmm.
just think that it's like I said, kind of like taking those moments from before where I feel like we really hit the mark and just trying to expand on those specific moments instead of trying to make another album that just kind of feels like a bunch of mashed up songs to me.
Right. So another thing I wanted to bring up is, as far as the time we're recording this episode ideally will be dropping while you guys are actually out on the road. You guys are
Sweet.
doing the Scars for You to Remember tour with a lot of friends of this podcast, to Boundaries, Orthodox Distinguisher, and Dr. Acula. Dr. Acula is the only band that has not been on the show here before.
That's
But
crazy.
when I saw that lineup, I was like, damn, this is just like metalcore like madness to me. So like talk
Yep.
to me initially about the idea of the curation of that to celebrate this upcoming album.
I mean, we've literally tried to organize this headliner like 4 separate times because like the talk about it started like before touring even came back from COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We were originally going to do it like earlier this year, but then as we kept getting closer and closer to stuff, we realized like we weren't going to be done the album, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
So then by the time we got to the 4th iteration, and we knew at that point we're like, okay, album is submitted, like this is all going to happen this time.
Right.
We had already gone through like 3 lineup ideas, and the third one was not a good idea. And
Why
yeah,
was it
like
not a good idea?
in hindsight, it was just like the wrong mix for what we wanted to do. All
Sure.
the bands were fucking sick, but it was way too much of exactly what I was saying before, where it's like peaks and valleys. Because like
Sure.
we had ideas that were like bands that were not heavy at all, and like trying to do like kind of like a mixed bill kind of night.
Right.
And then once we got to the iteration that ended up happening, we pretty much were just like, no, fuck it, breakdowns all night, like only bands that we know that like that we've toured with before or that we're really good friends with. And yeah, we literally like we got pretty much everything we asked for in the end, which was dope. Because like we had asked for some of those bands on the previous iterations, and they were like either busy at those times or like, in the middle of trying to figure something else out. So like
Yeah, or had their
it
own
worked out
albums
better.
that they're,
Yeah.
working on. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that ended up like we didn't even know that like every single band pretty much had put out something like very recently or was about to like, drop album. So like it
Right.
just kind of became a perfect storm. And I feel like it's another one of those situations, kind of like what I was talking about with the record, where I feel like the night is just going to get like crazier and crazier as it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of those bands is like super solid and can hold their own. So I don't think it's going to be like very up and down all night. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's really cool because like definitely mixed bill tours or shows of any kind, like that can definitely work and there's a time and place for that. But
Yep.
I respect just like, let's just bring on like as many friends as we can to like just maximize how much fun that we can have in between the actual shows themselves, and
Yep.
just give people like a proper debut of like 2022 breakdown music.
Yep. No, yeah, for sure. And I'm also, I feel like every one of the bands on the tour, like the music that they have released recently or they're going to release is like their best stuff that they've done yet too. Like I feel like it's just awesome that all of our friends and us, I feel like we're all kind of like leveling up at the same time and we're able to do this tour together, and it's just going to be great.
Yeah, I love being able to play shows with people like, when you're like, remember we were playing to like 20 people each, and now we're playing to like 200 plus for both of
Yeah,
us. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Because like
absolutely.
Boundaries played the In Darkness release show in Philly, like before their like proper come up. Like they had hype on the East Coast like a lot at that time. So the show was fucking insane for them. But like,
I don't think it was until the album that they put out at the end of 2020. I think
exactly,
it was
yeah.
that like,
Like it like
people know this band now. Yeah.
and like over the past like 3 years since In Darkness, like they've become like, I think one of the like biggest contenders for like next up in that genre slot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're popping off hard.
So I only asked this question because when I was on your Instagram, I was like, why is there like 10 to 15 TVs in Mitchell's van right now? But you were mentioning how like the production of this tour is something that y'all are focusing on as well.
Yeah, I really like, I've learned a lot over the past couple years working for other bands of like how stage production works and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to build up enough knowledge where I was like, all right, instead of renting this stuff and having someone like build a show for us, because that usually costs like a lot of money. And like I could understand why the price of entry on that, like a band our size probably wouldn't be able to do. So I just tried to like learn as much as I could over the past couple years, and we just bought all the stuff ourselves and we built the show like by hand.
Okay.
And we have synced up light show, and we have 2 video walls that we're bringing on the whole tour with us, and the whole thing is like all made like by the band, like it's all custom built for the set and everything.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and it's it kind of fucking hurts my head to look at it. So I really hope we didn't like make it too intense, honestly.
It's just like, I've just been watching it. I haven't even like watched it with us playing at like obscene volume decibel levels.
Yeah. Yeah. I put a warning like before it, like on the TVs and like over the PA, pretty much saying like, this is definitely seizure warning material. Like, be careful and shit. Cause like, yeah, I the first night's definitely going to be a gauge it scenario of like, all right, do we need to dial
that's
that
practice?
back?
Yeah. That's the trial run.
But I'm really excited about it. Like I feel like I was saying, I feel like a lot of bands of our size like just aren't able to bring that level of production into these size venues. And I think that I think it's something that can really make a difference of like, is someone going to come see you again or not? Because like I remember seeing, like, going back to like the Bring Me the Horizon example, like I remember seeing them in smaller venues, and they had those fucking like big letter cutouts of like BMTH, and like no band that played rooms like that brought anything like that, and it
Right.
looked fucking crazy. Same thing with like A Day to Remember, like they were playing like 1,000 cap venues in Philly, but still doing like, cryo and like entrances from like underneath the stage and like all this crazy shit. And it's like,
They had the
yeah, that's
one tour where they had like a fucking garage that they built, and they're
yeah, the
like,
whole house on stage, yeah.
right, yeah,
And like that, I feel like that was the point where like what they were doing made sense for the size venues they were in, but like watching them in those smaller venues do these crazy over the top things,
Mhm.
like as I got older, I realized like they were definitely probably eating like through a lot of money when they didn't really have it doing stuff like that.
Totally.
But it's literally like an investment in people coming back and like talking about your show. Cause
Yeah.
like, I mean, pretty much like 80% of the shows I go to have no production at all. And
Yeah.
it's like you're just watching a band play with like the house lights on or maybe like dimmed a little bit. And it's like, unless you really just enjoy that band's music and you're there just to experience the music live, you're not really going to get a lot out of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, production in our space is an interesting thing because I believe there's definitely a need for it as a band is scaling to a certain level. Like
Yes.
Knocked Loose would be a boring band to see live if they didn't have the level, if they're playing like a multi like 100 to 1,000 person cap room. If they're playing
Yeah.
a super DIY show, it's still sick because they own it. In like, you should be able to strip away everything and still play your set and like rock
Yeah.
people's faces.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people start bands and they try to skip scaling up their band and they want to do scrims, they want to do like all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
you or I could sit here and say one is right or one is wrong, but I think it should be a little just bit of a self-awareness check. Like,
Oh no, absolutely. Because like, there's also like a time and place for it. Like, you shouldn't be the opening band on a tour bringing an entire light rig.
yes.
Like, I've seen people do it, and everybody on the tour is just like, "Fuck you." You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
like,
straight up.
like unless it's some absolutely insane self-contained thing that's like on top of your cabs
Yeah.
and it adds absolutely no time to your changeover, you're gonna get clowned on for it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel like we were really ever in the position until now where we could pull something like this off.
Yeah.
So it's like to your point, like every band needs to do shows like completely without that shit, especially for your own sake, so you can get used to being in front of crowds in those more awkward positions. You know what I mean? And like, I feel like it's very obvious when you go see a band that like leveled up to that stuff too quick, because there's always less emphasis put on the performance because they spent so much time doing the extra shit first, like you were saying. So
and maybe the exception is if that is a well-established thing of your band out the gate, then yeah, lean into that. Like I'm thinking, I was filming this festival in Toronto that's definitely a little bit more like screamo, like kind of that breath of like DIY music. And there's this band, I know their name is Shy Low. It's like Shy, Low. I forget where they're from. They started their set and they're like, yeah, we're a little bit different. And they were like a 6-piece band with no vocalists, so just instrumentals. But they had they turned off all the lights and they had a crazy synced up light show. And they killed it. And it was like, I think the thought process for them was maybe let's have this like light show, so it's not just like all of us instrumentally kind of like doing that or whatever.
And like, also that was kind of what I meant earlier too, when I'm like, if you can self-contain this thing like inside your rig and make it happen, like there's definitely like that level of person out there that is just like that good at everything out the gate and can figure it out and get it working in that fashion. And like that, there definitely is like, something to be said there if you just come out the gate fucking crushing it. But I feel like the generic example of it is just like, the opener metalcore band rocking up with like the scrims and like the strobe light that his dad made. You know what I mean? It's like insane.
With all the Home Depot like
Dude. Yeah.
little lights, and it's like the light box switch.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah,
Like, dude, I did it at one point in time. I
yeah.
never brought it on a tour or like went to play a bigger show, but like, one of like me and Mike's like old ass local band, like we did a DIY light show when we like headlined a local show one time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's
Yeah.
it's just it's a self-awareness thing. There's
It's
a
a
ton of
self-awareness thing. And I
yeah,
think now there's things like podcasts and people talking about like, please don't do this anymore. You know?
yeah. We have an outlet to talk about the do's and don'ts of being a baby band now.
What's obviously like you're hitting a production milestone with this tour. What's like a crazy over the top production thing that you would love to have Varials do one day?
The thing that I've always wanted to do is banner drop.
Oh, okay.
Right
Interesting.
before you play, you put the fucking black curtain up so you like can't see the band setting up.
Mm-hmm.
I always feel like that is just so it's like the most effective thing that you can do because it's like that you don't see anything before it happens. You leave the stage blank, you move everything in behind that curtain, and then like you roll the intro, and then as soon as the first song starts, that shit drops, and it's like, oh, here it is. You know what I mean?
Right.
That is definitely far from our realm of possibility right now. But
right.
dude, I was even thinking about it. I was like, if I was like doing some headline tour in like 1,000 cap room, I would just let them do it for every band. Like,
right.
It would make
it goes up, it goes
so
down,
much
it goes
thicker.
up.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, your stage manager for that tour is gonna hate you.
Yeah,
but I like you'll just like, yo, I said this on this podcast in 2022. It has to happen. Do it.
Yeah. And like, and that's another thing I feel like a lot of people who headline tours and shit don't think about is like letting other people on your tour use like facets of your production. It just makes the whole thing sicker. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot of bands like get all this stuff and they like hoard it all to themselves, and it's just like turn the LED wall on and put the other band's logo on it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna make the whole thing way more immersive and way cooler through the whole show if you'll involve people like that.
Totally. Yeah.
I can't say that we can do that on the tour that we're doing right now because we literally can't keep the stuff on the stage during the show because the stages are so small.
Right.
But that's another thing I would love to be able to do in the future is just like extend those things to the bands that don't have them yet. You know what I mean?
Well, then it's also a learning opportunity for those bands to be like, oh,
Exactly.
This is how this actually works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like I always thought it was so funny, like also going to see bands and like watching these openers play with absolutely no production, and then the headliner comes on and it's like fucking insane.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, I don't know. I always think the contrast of it is really kind of funny.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no like prelude into that, but
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I
think people will understand more if anybody listens to this and then comes and sees the set that I'm talking about in this headliner. I think you'll understand what I'm talking about more because we're doing something pretty hilarious before we play with all the production.
Oh, can you drop that on the pod? Because this will come out when you're on tour. So.
Oh yeah, true. Okay, so yeah, I'll talk about it then. So we're gonna let our friend Eddie has been coming on tour with us like since COVID ended. He plays for this band called Dead Culture from Ohio. And he's going to be driving for us on this tour. But he also is going to be doing some content and shit for us. He's like a really talented upcoming photographer.
Cool.
But he is just like the biggest personality within our group. So we made a DJ set for him for before we play. And
okay.
So like Boundaries is going to end, and then while we're like doing Boundaries like changeover and like plugging in all of our shit, we're gonna bring like a merch table and like a laptop on stage real quick, and Eddie's literally gonna like DJ the room for like 15 minutes. And we made like this whole fucking, it's like a preset thing that's just gonna play every night. Mm-hmm. And it's just like a mix of like old ass like scene songs, like current like rap songs, like all sorts of it's like shit. It's just like a fucking mishmash of bullshit. And it also acts as the way for us to test the production to make sure that it's working.
Okay.
So it like, because every time I go to a show, it's like the changeover is boring as fuck. So I was like, all right, we can just have Eddie like pretty much have like a 15-minute emo night while we trip on
Man, that's so funny. I'm not gonna talk shit on any emo nights, but I feel like I'm at the point in my life where if there was a 15-minute emo night, that's my vibe versus like an entire evening dedicated to that.
Because I saw, God, who the fuck did it? I can't remember who it was because I'm blanking so hard right now. But I went to a show in March, and it was that Under Oath tour with Spirit Box and Bad Omen, Straight from the Path.
Yeah.
And I think it was Spirit Box. They played a song before their set. I think it was a Limp Bizkit song, and they used that song to test their production.
Oh,
So
okay.
they had all the house lights still on. The song got like a little louder through the PA, and then their light show started going. And I was like, "Oh, this is fucking sick." I was like, "I feel like I'm at a club right now."
Yeah, right.
So then that kind of gave me the idea of like, I'm gonna do that same thing, but like put an actual DJ on stage and make it like a dumb, like just funny little thing.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think there's definitely a practical aspect to that because like you definitely see now where bands will have like their song that plays almost entirety before like here's now the creepy intro before we like walk on stage or anything like that. But I like the idea of just being like, yo, this is our homie. He's gonna, play some nostalgic shit for the next 15 minutes.
And like, I don't know if they're gonna let us do it, but I was gonna ask our tour manager if he could advance the venues and see if we can give away alcohol while we do it. Because like, if the venue has the like wristbands and shit on, if we like buy bottles of alcohol from the bar, like they might let us give out shots or something. So like there's a couple other things like that we're trying to mix into it that could just like make it like this whole ass thing before we play.
Totally. So these are all great reasons to go check out Varials on tour. Coming to
you could get a free shot.
You could get a free shot and listen to like My Chemical Romance.
Gun, but we might be getting a t-shirt gun.
That was a question I had. It's like, is the DJ gonna pull out a t-shirt gun and fire it mid song? But
so I bought one, but then I deemed it possibly dangerous.
Oh, it's like too powerful.
Yeah, it's like, like I think if
just
I
like
stood,
the DJ shooting someone point blank with a size medium.
Like I like shot it, and I was like, this thing's meant to shoot a shirt from like an ice rink into the stands. Like It's like fucking insane. Yeah,
it's like in this little club, and someone's like, "I'm going to the hospital because I took this medium size shirt to the chest."
Yeah. And like, no, we'll just keep the crazy gun, shoot somebody in the crowd with it at point blank, and then they open the shirt up and it says like, I went to a Varial show and all I got was a broken face by this t-shirt.
That's perfect.
And then Reddit will go crazy again. It'll be great.
Yeah. Mitchell, this has been such a great interview and chat. I have one more question before we start to wrap up the show.
For sure.
I end every episode with my guests telling a favorite mosh related story, and that's anything that's first to your head. So that could be something that's gruesome, violent, wholesome, funny, could have happened to you did it, it happened at a Varial show, could have just happened at a show you were attending. Whatever's the first to your dome is how we start to end the show.
This is one of my favorite memories from like all of touring. So it's funny because the first show that we're playing on our headliner is at the venue that this happened at.
Okay.
It was the House of Independence in Asbury Park. It was on the second Wage War album release tour that we did with like Loathe and Gideon. It was the tour where I was saying I was playing bass for Gideon.
Right.
And that tour, just like with all those bands, had such a good vibe. And like pretty much every night, a load of people from the tour would just watch Wage War, and we would all like stage dive and just like have fun. And that night in Asbury Park, it got so far out of hand because we had a bunch of our friends from Philly and shit there. And like Wage Wars set pretty much turned into like a Varials or like Knocked Loose like Legion crowd. And it was so fucking insane that like Wage War fans were literally like all over Facebook and Twitter the next day, like complaining about how violent the show was. And there's got to be a video of the set. And I have this like vivid memory in my head of our friend John, who is like a crazy, like no holds barred, like crowd killer mosher. Like, I think it was like during Stitch, he like literally like stage dove, but like right on the front of the crowd, and then somehow maneuvered his legs onto the stage so he could just roll himself like across the whole front of the crowd, just beating the shit out of everybody. And like I knew in the moment, I was like, this is bad.
You're like,
and
this is sick, but I know how people are going to take this online.
I knew the next day it was going to be bad. And literally half the comments were like, yeah, it was like Varials and all of their friends just beating the shit out of everybody. And we were like, okay. And I think that was the last time that we really did like the tour package, like mosh, you know what I mean?
Right.
That was the end of that.
Yeah. No, that's a great story. And if anyone has videos of that, please send them my way. Mitchell, all of the band links, your links, and the tour information will be in the description of this podcast and in the show notes. But if there's anything you want to shout out, anything you want to plug, or anything you want to leave the people with, the floor is yours.
I think I want to say like thank you to anybody that's listening that's like supported the band with the change in lineup and just like embracing what we're doing now. I feel like a lot of times this doesn't go very well for a lot of bands, and it feels like it's going pretty well for us. So if you've been here through it and you're still liking it, thank you very much. And new record comes out on October 14th. We got a lot of stuff coming up next year, and we're really, really excited to kick this album cycle off. So
yeah, I love all of that. Definitely, I am excited to hear the record once it's out, and hoping for all the best on the tour, and hope we get to cross paths one day, Mitchell. I would look much look forward to that.
Hell yeah, man! Yeah, if you're ever like somewhere that we're playing, whether it's near you or you're like traveling or something, just hit me up.
Yeah.
Let me know, man.
We definitely will.